Hey everybody, Pastor Chris here again. We are almost done preaching in the Gospel of Matthew. I have two more sermons, and at the end of this video I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing next. It's something I'm really looking forward to. But I gotta say I have loved this time during this summer, and I can't say there's a lot about this summer I love, but I've loved my time in Matthew. I have spent so much time reading huge chunks of Matthew. I feel sometimes like I'm reading it for the first time, or I'm really getting it for the first time. And my appreciation for Matthew as a writer just keeps growing and growing. He is a master storyteller, the way he lays things out. And sometimes he moves things around a little bit in the story, or he'll have gaps in there to bring other events together to highlight and help us understand different things. And it's just amazing what he does and how he does that. So we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 20 on Sunday. It's a passage that's commonly called the parable of the vineyard workers, or the parable of the workers. And how we get there is, we've been talking about, Peter asked this question about forgiveness. How many times do I need to forgive my brother? And that was this last Sunday. And after that, after Jesus tells the parable of the unforgiving servant, he's confronted by some Pharisees with a question about divorce. And they ask it as a legal question, but Jesus again turns it into a relationship question. And after that, the disciples get upset because all the kids want to come and meet Jesus, and Jesus says, no, let the little children come to me. Then he encounters this rich young man who wants to really kind of earn his way into eternal life by doing good things. In the end, when he says he's followed all these commandments, he goes away upset because Jesus tells him then he needs to sell everything and give it to the poor if he wants to be perfect. And we see again, this guy wants some sort of a formula for how to be a good person to get into eternal life, as he calls it, or an eternal life. But once again, Jesus shows people it's not about being a good person, it's about being good to people. And the last verse of that encounter is Jesus turns to the disciples and he says, many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. And then where we pick it up, chapter 20, verse 1, is he starts telling a parable. And the parable stems directly from this statement, many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. And he says, because of this, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out to hire workers for his vineyard. And this is the story where Jesus tells throughout the day, this landlord keeps going to the market where the workers, the day laborers, would be hanging out. And he kept hiring more as the day went. And then at the end of the day, he tells his manager to pay them from the last hired to the first, and the last hired get a full day's wage, a denarius. That's a coin, and that's the common payment for a day's labor. And the first people who were hired, the ones who worked all day, thought they were going to get paid more. When they got there, they got paid the same. And then they grumble, they murmur. It kind of goes back to in the wilderness with Moses, when the people are always murmuring against God and murmuring against Moses. They're murmuring against this landowner. And he says to them, he's like, this is my money, and you're upset because I choose to be generous, and I'm not doing you any injustice. I'm paying you the wages we agreed upon. But you're upset, you're jealous, you're coveting because you thought you would get more because they're getting paid the same as you for doing less, and you don't like that. And on the one hand, it's understandable. It sort of violates their idea of fair play, that if we hear it all the time, equal pay for equal work, whether it's with minorities or women or anything like that. It's like, if you're doing the same job, you should get paid the same. That's a a great idea. It should be that way. But Jesus isn't talking about working conditions. He's telling a parable about how the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And there's an interesting statement here of what Jesus says. The literal statement, he says, he says, can I do what I want with what is mine? Can I pay the worker whatever I want? I can pay them more than what was agreed upon if I want to. And then he says this phrase, it's normally translated something like, are you envious because I'm generous? Or are you jealous because I'm generous to others? But a literal translation, he's using a euphemism, is he says, is your eye evil because I am good? And that's what it is. That euphemism is, means you're mad at me because I'm doing something good. And we can all see the injustice in that. Why would they be mad at Jesus for doing something good? Or the landowner, but the landowner is Jesus in the parable. So we're going to look at, what does that really mean? I will never forget a sermon that I heard my pastor many years ago at the church I was attending up in St. Paul, Minnesota. My pastor, Paul Ofstedal, who actually recently passed away, gave the sermon, and I've actually used that sermon, not exactly, but I wrote it and did it kind of in the same style, because what he did was he would be preaching on the text, and then he would step away from the pulpit, and he would stand down right in front of us, and he would then become one of the workers when they've gone home to talk to their wives, their families, and he talks about, and he would say, as if we were his family, and he was talking to us, and he would talk about as one of the workers who just worked an hour and got paid a day's wages, what a marvelous thing that was. But he also did about the workers who worked all day and got paid the same, and how unfair that was to them. And so we're going to talk about that. I've done that in a past sermon, so I'm not going to do that. But we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about the generosity of God and how it's all about Jesus. He doesn't say these words, but everything he's teaching here, right, sort of in the heart, in the center part of Matthew, is it's not about being a good person. It's about being good to other people. So what we have coming up, I'm pretty excited, in starting the first Sunday of October and all of October, and then the first 4 Sundays of November, I'm going to be preaching a series on Jacob from the Old Testament. And it's I'm pretty excited about it. It's just starting to get some real work done on it. And we had one on Abraham, and we had one on Joseph, and so now we're getting Jacob, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to really dig into these great stories from Genesis and the life of Jacob, and how everything changed during Jacob's life, and their situation, and how things were working out for them, and even how God was going to fulfill the promise made to Abraham. So that'll be, and then, believe it or not, that'll conclude on the 4th Sunday in November, and then all of a sudden we're in Advent, which we have a nice day today, so I don't even want to think about Advent and Christmas yet. So this Sunday, we're looking at Matthew. It's chapter 20, about this parable. You could call it the parable of the generous boss or the generous landowner, or you could call it the parable of the vineyard workers. Depends on your take on it. So again, 8:30 and 10:30 services this Sunday, and if you're not comfortable coming into the church, that's absolutely fine. That is your decision. Again, we will be online Sunday morning, and so we will see you either online or at church, and you have a blessed rest of your week. Bye.